So you'll have to be an extra good listener then.
I'm trying.
There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky. And you ask, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly?
Love that.
Yeah, right. There's always the two, hopefully, maybe more than two sides of that when we look at problems to solve or challenges to meet or whatever. There's the pressure of the status quo, right? They go along to get along, which we've all been at times of our life seen that was just the easy, and it was. And then there are the other times where we've, for whatever reason, God, the Holy Spirit, stupidity, ignorance, where we've stepped forth in faith. Many times mine's just been ignorance, that I didn't know what the possibilities might be on the other side. You know, thank goodness.
If you don't try, you never will.
No, right, your dad probably said something like that.
Oh my.
Everybody's dad probably had an expression like that.
Get off your butt and try.
Yeah,
That was usually a
yeah.
caressing way you would say it.
Sure. With love.
My dad's expression was trying it and good enough. You gotta do it.
Okay, so we know that some of these examples could go too far. They could push us into shame or other, whatever the kind of baggage we all carry around. But this chapter on how to employ reflecting theologically, this way of liberating leadership. But let's review the CARE principles, right? C, creating safe space. And I think Sharon's reflection on that already this morning is helpful for us as we move through what is it being post-election time, post-hurricane recovery, like how do we create safe communities? What does that look like? Because there's a lot of space for ego and a lot of space for I don't know what. I can't always describe all that. But
people that talk the most. Some people don't like to talk in groups, and other people.
I'm sure.
And I think one of the things about this chapter was you don't have to talk. Wasn't it? The chapter, I was very called up short kind of by that too. We can be listeners, right? Yeah, we can be listeners. So let's review our covenant with each other and as we can that we agreed to. We'll start with Lawson, can you read number 1?
Be fully present, extend welcome, and presume we are welcomed.
Good. Fred, you too.
We come as equals.
We stay curious about each other.
Ginger?
Slow down to think and reflect. Author our own story.
No fixing. Turn judgment to wonder.
And do you know the last one, Kate? Do you have something in front of you that gives our last covenant agreement?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. I can't, no.
The last one is practice confidentiality. So we try to maintain what happens in this room. We can talk about our reaction to something that happened in the room, but not somebody else's conversation or experience, right?
Right.
We could work there.
Do you see these as practices for this space, for this time, this group, or like apply those like to a board meeting?
It depends on if everybody agrees to it. These were the 8 principles that we all agreed to when we met, right? Other groups, you could add things depending on the content of the group. There might be things that might not be as important to other groups you're a part of, but for every group that gathers to sort of be able to try, if you're creating safe space, right, like a board meeting, that everyone would agree on how they're going to behave.
Rules.
Yeah, the ground rules. Yeah.
Covenant, yeah.
We, like the vestry has one, right? You know, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. So oftentimes in formal groups like Sunday school, we can or may not discuss what the ground rules are. You know, we try to hope that people won't talk over each other. We hope that people on Zoom, you know, follow the rules of Zoom that we've learned over the last 4 years, right? Like if there's other noise in your space, you mute yourself. If there's, right, that kind of thing. or you try to have your camera on when you can, because we want you to be present in the space, not some sort of ghost thing, entity. It was just, I can see that different groups would have different things that might be important to that group. But that list that's found in, our field guide, there's a list of like 15 different things. If you don't have a copy of that, here's an extra one. If you don't have that, you have that. Okay.
Yes,
Okay. But anyway, there's a whole list in there, 15 or 16.
Yeah.
So, all right. So A, what is A then? If the C is creating safe space.
Ask self-awakening questions.
Right. Try to be about self-awakening questions. What are the questions we add that can help someone go deeper in their story? And I think that the way the book is organized and the way the authors want to discuss this is that they have, yes, you do. They have story, it's based on storytelling. Giving space for people to tell their story. And trusting that in someone telling their story, what we're listening for is how that, so what, I guess. Right? Like how does that impact us? Now they curated stories that were particular, to the book and made really good sense. And so when you're leading a group, they're advocating to get rid of through self-awakening questions and storytelling, the experts. How often are you in places where there's an expert? Sometimes you invite the expert in. I get that. Thinking, Ann, you're involved in conservation circles in the community or in the land trust, and that in that case, there might be experts that can, because I am not an expert in that. I might want to know what the impact is of not mowing my lawn, right? Like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what insects harbor there and then what animals come to eat the insects that are the best for our land. I was just at Marywood. So I was just, that was something, yeah. And how they've changed the whole landscape of Marywood, right? So,
I always like someone who could be called an expert proclaims themselves as a long-term practitioner. That to me says, you know what, I don't know it all, but I've been doing this a long darn time. Maybe I know a few things.
yeah.
That makes me feel more comfortable that they don't do that above.
And the word practitioner has the stem of practice, and practice is.
Yeah, it's art, it's science, it's all the above.
Yeah. Okay. So self-awakening questions hopefully lead us toward that, and storytelling, valuing our own story and the stories of others. So without safe space, can you go, it just always feeds back into the loop. Because without safe space, no one is going to tell their story. Right? We're just not.
Yeah.
Sharon shared her story last week. A small piece of your story, but I think that as I reflected on it later, Sharon, it was a larger piece of your story of how are you heard? How are you heard? And how are any of us heard? And that's where it connected to my story. So when I heard your story, when I was examining my own feelings about being heard or not heard or stopped or felt like what I had to say was not what everybody wanted to hear or, so I was able to, my reflection continued long after last Thursday.
Especially after that last point.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Whoa, well, it's time to leave now.
I know, sorry.
I'm out of
It
here.
was very poor leadership on my part. I have to say.
There is that Poland.
Was I there last week? I don't
Yes, you
remember.
Luckily, my friend Lawson brought us back with prayer, which is always a good way to end after I've hurt everyone's feelings or trampled on your thing. It's like,
She dropped a bomb on me.
can we just pray now? Because obviously I've lost, what is the expression? I lost the plot. I totally lost the plot.
Not all science.
So, but anyway, and then the third letter R is gonna reflect theologically, and according to these authors, this is their theological reflection process, right? Other people have different processes, but this was one where when we reflect, we read, we talk about our feelings, what's the theme, what happened, we examine, we focus on our feelings, We try to listen deeply, look for the content that connects us theologically. What does this remind me of? Do you remember anything in scripture, in history, in my own personal story? Where does this connect? And we capture what might be a new thought, even if, you know, something you just hadn't thought of before. And then the last part is to take action, which is then also the E in care, right? The E in care is enabling, enacting the next most faithful stuff, enacting. So the theological reflection leads in its own way to enacting something. And remember, we said take action may not be that you know, send a letter to Congress, draft a legislation, pick up a protest sign. It may be that you learn more about something. It may be that you have a conversation with someone else. It may be it may be you atone in yourself, right? Like it can take many things. It's not, any of you have done Lectio Divina, you know, one of the things we do is like, how is this going to change your reading of this scripture today? The last time we read it through together, we always say like, well, how is this going to impact your life? It's not like I'm divorcing my husband, I'm moving to Arizona, and I'm buying a schnauzer. That's not, it doesn't have to be like that, right?
I'm looking at that train of thought, where'd that all?
Yeah.
I'd like to spend some time with you after this class.
You're
I know.
but I mean, whatever it is, it could be,
Though.
again, it could be, I'm just gonna spend some more time in prayer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna reread this text. I'm gonna talk to my friend Ann about how she related to that, right? It's not, I think sometimes we think we have to come away from these moments like, oh, you know, I'm buying a whole new wardrobe and selling my car. I'm gonna not eat meat anymore, and I'm gonna, whatever. I'm only wearing vegan clothing. I don't know what it is. I mean, often I feel like I have to do something like that in order for it to be meaningful.
Let your freak,
That's me.
let your freak flag fly.
Yeah, that's called being all in.
Yeah, all it is, all in a very different way, baby, in a very different way. And also, it's hard to maintain. It's like, I am not gonna wear all vegan clothing, right? Like, so it's gonna be hard for me to maintain that. I think I'm not the same person I was in 1976, the year I graduated from high school. I am not. You know, so my changes may have been in some ways incremental. And when I talk to people from high school, like the same way I'm amazed, or maybe you're amazed when you talk to people you knew from a long time ago, that they're not the same person. Often, well, once in a while, they are the same person. That's a different story. But most people, you know, we've matured and grown and had life experiences that have moved us to be different kinds of people than we were. You know, we know more, and so we do more. I think that's been an expression that's been around for a long time. We know more, and so we behave better. Maybe.
We hope.
We hope. All right, let's talk about so we've reviewed where we are. We know what the principles are. If nothing else, we come away next week. You know what care means, and you know what that could look like in any organization you're a part of. I don't care if that's your family, your neighborhood association, your friends, a book club. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, and you may or may not ever use it, but you'll know about it. And it might be nice to talk about at a cocktail party. I don't know. Until people start walking away. That's generally what happens to me.
You're in a flood today.
I had a full night's sleep last night, y'all. I just wanted you to say that it's like I have them like, what did I tell you, Kate? 4 times a year. This is my one time. That's it.
I love you being full of yourself. It's wonderful.
All right. What's coffee?
I'll plead the fifth right now. A little close to the orbit. How about the Schnauzer and Palm Springs? Sorry, I missed all of it.
It was Arizona.
Arizona.
It would probably be amazing, like in a trailer.
Yeah, okay.
Liberating leadership. Tell me what your thoughts are. Did you read it? Do you care? Is it important?
Yes.
It might be the most important chapter in the book because it was the most difficult for me to read. Why?
Yeah, why?
Because there was so much in there. It was just a lot. And though I resonated with most of it, like that is understanding of being a warrior hero with my cape and swooping in and fixing things. And that's how I live my life,
Gotcha.
right? Like,
Gotcha.
I have my own little thing, I'm in charge of my own little thing, and then but this idea of warrior healer, I don't even like the word warrior, but in any case, we could just maybe let go of warrior, but healer, that I was empowering others. I think we've all talked that way in leadership circles. What does it mean to empower someone else? To lighten your own load, to prevent your own burnout. So there's a personal impact on this. I think that was my takeaway. There's what happens to the process and to the group as a result, or whatever the function is. That changes for people.
I thought it was interesting because they made the point that this liberating leadership emerges. It's just not like diving in and going and making these decisions. It's something that emerges.
And I think for me, I agree with you. That's probably the best, but lots of times it doesn't happen that way. It's just a blender puree and you don't get the story, you don't get the design, and the result is you get a mess. Or if you're lucky, perhaps a crapshoot you got it. But I agree with you. If you do it this way, well, the way I like the way they described it, it has a tendency to have more of a cadence, a drumbeat. It works.
It's sustainable, is that the word?
Yeah, that's a better
And it
word.
becomes like a collective thought process, as opposed to just one person just coming in, charging like a bull in a china shop and fixing.
And to her, I don't know if that was your point, but for her, that was the way you do it. You get in there, ta-da, Captain Healer, fixer, and it's like,
Well, there's a total lot of ego boost in that. I mean, that's like to be rewarded for seeing a problem, fixing a problem, doing your job, it's a lot of atta-girl stuff.
yeah.
And I worked out a whole lot of childhood by being that warrior hero in circumstances, right? So, but what is the consequence? The consequence was burnout. The consequence is not knowing how to deal with conflict. The consequence, not sharing information with other people. It's all, I'm just emulating a top-down thing when I behave that way. But that's, to my credit, whatever, survival. That's the only thing I understood how to do.
But it leaves a destructive path in its wake, because there are people then that just, developed feelings and emotions and let that,
Because what's the number one thing? I was resentful of everyone. So I just carried around a tremendous amount of anger and resentment that no one ever saw, maybe, unless they were ever with me in the car while I was driving. But you know what I mean? Like, it does that complete blame. Just like I just shoved all that somewhere else. So, I think that at the bottom of 128, it says, when we can get to that page,
There.
Heroes rescue folks in danger. Right? Like, who doesn't want to be that person? I love those movies. And fix what's broken. Healers help living systems reconnect to their wholeness. So I see that there's times for some, but really, what are we striving for? This reconnecting to wholeness. This is what we say we believe. It's what we say Jesus is all about. It's, it's consistent with our own theological makeup. This connecting to a living system. So care practices assume a leadership that is tied to the well-being of communities and their well-being. This isn't a one-upsmanship. It's not a one-over. It's not a winner-take-all. It's where everyone has a voice,
Well,
where everyone participates.
there's no I in team.
Right, that one.
That's a good thing.
Now, their experience evolved from being parts of Black churches where oftentimes leadership in a Black church, they raise up someone from their community or somewhere else, right, with a voice. can you think of them? Of course, right? Besides Martin Luther King Jr., but Otis Moss. He's an amazing preacher, but unlike his daddy, he's taken and used these principles in his own church in Chicago. So it's a wider thing, but he still is a prophetic voice for the community. And then what happens, the mantle that falls on them can be dangerous. But who doesn't want to look for, maybe you don't. Leadership cashers, so we have to come up with a team thing, a thing we do, a project for our class. And we decided to add a page on the cashier's website, the cashier's Chamber of Commerce website, about who do you ask if, where do you go for mental health, where do you go for food assistance, where do you go for, so with a QR code. But anyway, this has taken us 6 months because we're just all in a room. I got realtors, you got me, you have Carla, you have some more realtors, we got some developers. We got about 8 retired people and some more developers. Nothing bad about realtors. But I'm just saying, there's not any continuity, like we're not all coming from the same background. And it took till last week for leadership to bubble up in that. I mean, the idea was mine, I'll take credit for that, of having some sort of, after the hurricane, like, I don't know, who sharpens chainsaws? That's not in there. But things like that, like, who do you go to? How did you know where to go? How did you know someone was gonna be at the Baptist church? How did you know that, right? And so that's how it started, but it kind of has morphed into more of a FAQ about, but it was also like, I didn't know what the Center on Aging did in this county and how phenomenal it is, all the stuff it does. No idea that they gave firewood to poor people. How would I know that? I didn't know that they built ramps and porches and stairs and whatever people need. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that all the stuff that the rec center offers. I didn't know what the library did. I didn't know what I didn't know the difference between the Blue Ridge Health Foundation and the dogwood. I don't know any. They all do great things, but I didn't know what they did or what their histories were. So I've learned so much. Like I didn't know how Summit School was formed, and I didn't know any of that, but I do now. And not that would be in the FAQ page, but I would like that information. That's not secret. There was nothing secret. So how would we share that information with people? But it wasn't until our meeting on Tuesday where leadership rose up to sort of say, okay, you do this and you do this. And then people said, no, I really want to do that. I'd rather do this. And it felt like, but it took us that long because it just takes that long often. We didn't come in and we did exercises and blah, blah, but it was unintentional how it formed, but I think it's the only way it could form. I'm not suggesting you reorganize the group. I just mean it's just interesting to watch it. Like, do I feel comfortable with these people? I didn't feel comfortable with the people when we were at the sheriff's department because I thought it was a terrible presentation. And anyway, I didn't say anything because I didn't feel like I was going to be supported in how I felt it.
Why did you think it was a terrible presentation?
Because I just don't agree with the principles of the sheriff's department.
Okay.
I mean, I think basically, especially when they have an assault vehicle that they paid $260,000 for. It's got like battering rams and high power rifles and machine guns and tires that are unpuncturable. I mean, I was like, really? In Jackson County, we need a Bearcat?
Yes. But yeah.
No, we don't. Then I just didn't know what to do with that. And the sheriff was kind of like giving a re-election speech. And I just was like, I don't have time for that. For most, I think that they create problems for themselves to solve. So instead of really trying to solve what the problems are. That's my opinion. I live in a bubble. I understand that. But I have some opinions about police.
Well,
Anyway, this is way off the track, y'all. But I just want to say, at that meeting, I did not feel safe to say, wow, I have some questions. Plus, I didn't have the questions formed in a way that didn't just sound like they did come out of my mouth. They just came out kind of like, you know, giving everybody the finger and, you know, sticking my tongue out at them is not, that's not productive.
Yeah.
Where did you learn that? No, I'm kidding.
That's a question you could explore another time. Let's get back to leadership, shall we? I don't even know where that came from. Anybody else?
In the first paragraph down here that you're talking about, Lawson, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I just see, fix what's broken, you know, my feeling of that, you know, I guess having personally experienced the time when I tried to fix an alcoholic, but, to fix what's broken, it's only act one. You know, if you become dependent on the fact that wait, I know who I can call that can fix this. You know, that's not a good place to be in, to encourage, to maybe offer suggestions. I think even that it can be, a bad idea. To try to fix anyone, you will have to fix them again and again and probably again. What's the line about fishing? If you give somebody a fish dinner, they eat that night. If you teach them how to fish, they eat the rest of their life.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's about empowerment.
Encouragement.
Yeah, not fixing, but empowering.
But, you know, what I learned a long time ago in, I don't know what it was, polarity management. When was that? The 80s. That, you know, we often think of that problems are to be solved instead of polarities to be managed. I'm sure you've all heard that.
Have to be what, managed?
Managed, right? Good point.
You know, some problems have to be solved. Your toilet is not working. Water's spewing out of it. That's a problem to be solved. You hire a plumber, you fix it. You learn a task, you fix it, you put a new blah blah in there. Whether or not communities don't have water, you know, or how water is distributed, or when, like, right? Those might be polarities to be managed. It's always a bigger thought, but polarities to be managed require more than one person. I can't manage a polarity on my own. I need to know that someone else is in the room with me, in the space with me, managing that. So you're right, we can't. Fixing has some things. Later on, I think that language and leadership went from a technical fix to a theological fix, or that's not the word, and I'll think of it tomorrow.
What's the philosophy of the I've heard her talk about that a lot, but I'm not familiar with.
I don't.
But it's to enable people to get on their own feet, not to, you know. Anybody else familiar with circles?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know somebody that's in it, but I don't.
I mean, if Herb was here, he could tell us completely, but yeah, circles is supposed to be a model based on, let's not just start handing out checks. Right? Like, you know,
What?
just don't hand out a check, right? Try to figure out what the needs are of the community. It is supposed to be an interactive relationship. What are the needs? What resources do we have?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes, you know, that's a hard model because it takes what? It takes time. Sometimes it's much easier to say, here's our Christmas gift basket. See you next Christmas. Nothing wrong with Christmas gift baskets, but it's not gonna solve poverty. Right? It is gonna, maybe, hopefully everybody eats and has a new coat, and that's awesome, and a toy to play with. I love that idea. But does it fix systemic poverty?
No, and sometimes I find that, well, my daughter's youngest one is very active and studies all this stuff. And she says sometimes, for example, it is, this will sound funny, hurtful to say it, the parents, when you do those kind of things, because it makes the father have more feelings of, I can't provide. You know, these are my children and I cannot provide. And so it's a whole nother mess of problems things need to be done where you teach people or you help people to learn and to appreciate and not act like, watch me, I'll show you how.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when, home economics people went into West Virginia with, like bags of grapefruit to help feed people.
Or throwing toilet paper to them when they've had.
Well,
Paper towel.
yeah. I mean, so,
Our missionaries and
yeah,
to remote tribes. I went on one trip and these missionaries had diapers, like a week's worth of diapers for these little children. Well, what were they gonna do when these disposable diapers ran out? I mean, it was a,
Or they
Well,
just disposable diapers, period.
right.
yeah, they weren't, I mean, they were plastic diapers, they were disposable diapers.
And I think there's a lot of well-meaning examples of that, because I went on a mission trip and we were in the Dominican Republic and we were up in the mountainous area near the Haitian border, and the people, it's just, it's really sad. And so the people have a lot of issues with parasites. So we were given, medicine that I would prescribe, and, if you have a parasite. Well, I had a problem prescribing it. Because, oh yeah, I'm gonna get rid of your parasite, you're gonna get rid of it. Well, 2 weeks later, because your health habits haven't changed, you're gonna get it again. Because, we couldn't convince them that they needed to bathe upstream and use the bathroom downstream in the river.
Yeah.
And so it became an ethical dilemma about just handing out parasite medicine.
It's your Christmas basket.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we thought we were doing so good, we sent all this parasite, I mean, and then I got there and saw what the situation was, and it was reality, and I was like,
I remember when we purchased, 100,000 mosquito nets. Right?
100,000 what?
Mosquito nets. Do you
Oh,
remember?
okay.
I mean, that wasn't that long ago. 10 years ago? 8 years ago?
yeah.
And then, whatever there was a governmental thing, and all of them, they destroyed all the mosquito netting. I don't know, that's a different story.
And so, yeah, because, the mosquito netting, that was, lovely gesture or whatever, but once that mosquito netting wore out, the mosquitoes still exist, and you're gonna get malaria.
Yeah.
And so,
You can't do anything about the other changes,
right,
when we talk about immigration and we talk about what impact it might have on countries where people are fleeing for very good reason, not just coming here to, I don't know what, anyway, to live in a hotel in New York City. I don't think that's why they're coming here.
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't work with, we could do other things, but those are harder problems to solve, and there isn't an answer usually at the end of a 4-year term or the end of a 2-year term, whatever it is. So liberating leadership is not, I've written on the top of our handout, it's not about Lone Rangers or looking for a messianic figure. It doesn't use people as a means to an end. People are the end. So that's sometimes when you look at somebody's solution or some group's solution, how are people impacted by the decision?
I think leadership, the kind of leadership you're talking about, a lot of it is learning how to pass the torch. That you pass the torch to somebody else that's going to carry on. You don't keep it tight in your own hands. It's like, the definition of democracy is a peaceful transfer of power. And that's what I'm grappling with that right now, how to get good new leaders to take up. I gotta go to something at 11.
Okay, you and Fred, go. Humans are the ends, I said in there, and then also that liberating leadership is not known for its products, but its process. and this is something hard for us. You know, factories produce widgets. And in a industrial age that we've come out of, that makes sense, right? How that sort of thinking about how we do things and we produce things, and we're a country that produces things, and that's what we have an end result, we have a product. We are more interested in the process. How did we get here? What can we do? How are we working together? What does that look like? So, right,
But without the process, you can't even hope to have a product. You know, without the process, you can't get, the real effective changes and, you know, the working together to come up with multiple solutions.
Right,
I think you need a process.
oh, that's what the whole thing's about. I mean, if you don't have it, I think it's a pendulum swing in some ways.
You have to have both.
You have to have, well, maybe you do, I don't know it. See, but one is a perceived product, I wanna make paper clips. Okay, that's
Or-
great, but I don't know how to have a solution, solve a problem, fix poverty, solve world hunger. I don't know, I mean, I know what I want, but I don't know how we're gonna get there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, the current product is what has come to be from a story and a design,
right?
feeding off the book. The result is that a product doesn't have to be a widget.
Right.
It can be a scholarship, it could be a pedal pusher, it could be whatever.
Mhm.
Now, we did 75 of these widget processes, things, whatever they were, and did it work? Yes, no, maybe, kind of. And then you reassess the process.
Cause it's a
Say,
back around.
it's plan, do it, check it, act. Plan, do, check it. It's like a clock.
Mhm.
And I know I'm being very,
No, it's,
but you never, I don't think, learn, okay, I keep falling and scraping my knee. Okay, I bandage it up. Well, there's a big divot right there. If you fix the divot, then you'll probably stop falling. You probably have to, like you're talking about the malaria thing. If you bathe downstream and drink upstream, then you're gonna, so the product is they keep getting it back. So you change the process based on what the product output is today.
Right.
That's what I think of it.
And,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
the process, like the thing is with these problems like generational poverty,
Right.
you know, I read this book that was out, this is 10 years ago, on generational poverty. And there is no product for generational I mean, yes, we would love for everybody to get out of poverty.
But it's a product of something.
It's a
Something
product
caused
of generations of thought processes that, you know, are, that.
or systemic, institutional
Products.
things that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're
That's
you're gonna
part of it.
fix this, but you haven't addressed, like you're saying, downstream,
Or
upstream.
upstream, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I used Margaret's, you
Yeah.
know, bathing upstream and drinking downstream, you're gonna get malaria or
Our
cholera.
parasites
Yeah,
and
right.
everything bad, you know, yeah.
So about process, then I said on page 140, at the bottom of the page, attention to process, how we listen, how we engage, how we organize our time, how we receive and integrate feedback, how we convene and connect, how we manage work, how we build leadership, how we design, how we motivate, how we tend our inner lives. All of this reveals key markers of liberating leadership. Attention to process is central to the design and implementation of care practices.
Mhm.
It can't just be, I mean, it can be, there's an end goal, but we might never get to that end goal if we're not paying attention to the steps that lead to it.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but on 159,
Okay.
there's a really good exercise. It starts, I thought,
Mhm.
at the bottom about close your eyes, deep breaths, imagine you're at a door, walk through the door, what do you see? I did that. I'm reading this and going, okay, somebody watching, I hope I don't fall, I'm gonna do this,
Yeah.
but more imaginary.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it really is it's a good way to center, I think. For me, it was a good way of centering myself. Going, oh boy, I need to rethink this one. Or maybe not.
Well, I'm hoping you're thinking about your leadership capacity
Sure.
and how this would work with the groups that you're most closely aligned with.
Yeah.
You know, can you suggest any of this? Are there storytellers emerging? You know, are there ways to listen to their stories? How are there ways that we can help them move through their own stories by asking self-awakening questions, right? As we change the structure of pastoral care a little bit, like, are we doing any of that? Are we trying any of that? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about this with Rob in terms of how the vestry is organized.
Oh, okay,
How
yeah.
the vestry, it works and is organized.
Well, and rightly so, you'd think, gosh, this is so brilliant, like it's so easy. On page 160, item D, so after you've gone through this door, you've thought about your name, looking back, before you leave, name one concrete step you can take over which you have power and agency to make this hopeful future become a reality. And then walk back to the present doorway and go, oh, I just picked this up, maybe. If you're open and listening, 2 ears, 1 mouth, you know?
Well, we're gonna do that next week
Cool.
when we,
Oh, I'm ahead.
and as we finish a little bit,
I
but,
bet, I bet.
There's so many people who don't believe they have agency.
Oh,
It's like that's
I think you read that in a book too.
Something to do.
What they, like that
How
guy.
many people that don't believe what?
They
they have
have,
agency. They have.
like the story of the Nate,
Yes,
right? Like his story is so powerful in the book. Giving him this chance to think about what does this legislation mean for my community?
mm-hmm,
And as a mother, as a grandmother now of a mixed race child, you bet I'm thinking about it.
sure.
So,
marry a woman, see what that's like.
yeah, right. Right, okay, so chapter 7, you know, enacting the next most faithful step. It's okay. We didn't, I put it here in case we, you know, in case I shut up and we had time, but I didn't. And so we are gonna talk about enacting and what does that mean? And what does next mean? I mean, seriously, what does faithful mean? We're gonna break that down the way they did in the book. We're gonna do that exercise. So be thinking about what is something that's been on your heart and mind, right? Like how would you, as Kevin talked about, what door would we walk through? How do you see yourself? Like imagining yourself in that role. And that, we don't give a lot of time to that. Imagination is like something children do. I'm pretending I'm the waitress and I'm taking your order, right? That's something children do. When it gets to adults in imagination, it's like, well, that's for people who are artists or dancers or writers. And that's just not
Like I
true.
even did, oh, I hope nobody sees me, like, okay, once I got past it, I don't give a shit, excuse me.
Yeah,
I don't care if anyone sees me,
yeah,
I just did it,
right.
right.
You practice.
So you played the waitress, or
Right.
played Superwoman,
Yeah.
whatever.
But that's what we were all allowed to do. Well, maybe we weren't all. I was allowed to do that as a child.
Yeah.
And in fact, encouraged to, because we had a bicycle and a sandbox or something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we had thousands of toys and I certainly didn't have anything electronic. But, so I'm wondering about how, you know, imagining works and then when we stop imagining. What is that time in our life when we say like, well, imagination is for children? That's great for somebody, but that's not me, right?
That it was crushing to me when I was 6. All I wanted from Santa was an operating room table, and my parents chose not to get that for me,
Mm.
Oh,
you know? That was crushing.
I think it's wonderful that you could imagine that, like that. That's awesome.
Next, all the kitchen
Sorry.
knives are missing.
She wanted to do real operation.
That poor frog, Donna.
I just had to
Why
add a
don't
little
we
bit to hear y'all.
That's great.
All right, well, here's a little poem from Mary Oliver,
Oh,
Called-
great.
Lead.
It's called what?
Lead, L-E-A-D, since we've been talking about leadership.
Mary Oliver is good.
She is. Here is a story to break your heart. Are you willing? This winter, the loons came to our harbor and died, one by one, of nothing we could see. A friend told me of one on the shore that lifted its head and opened the elegant beak and cried out in the long, sweet savoring of its life, which, if you heard it, you know it is a sacred thing. And for which, if you have not heard it, you had better hurry to where they still sing. And believe me, tell no one just where that is. The next morning, this loon, speckled and iridescent and with a plan to fly home to some hidden lake, was dead on the shore. I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean only that it would break open and never close again to the rest of the world.